How what's up, y'all? It's poppin'. It's D about to react to this vid by Naomi Cannibal. It's titled Gen Z Looks Old. So what now? This whole conversation was viral after that guy from TikTok made that video and said that, he's in his 20s and he's Gen Z, but he looks much older. So a lot of people have been, having discourse around this whole situation. I mean, I have said this before on this channel that, I have seen people in the Gen Z generation who look a bit older, but I mean, who cares really? We all gonna get super crusty and super old and die anyway. Well, if you are lucky, okay, if you're lucky, you're gonna get old and die. But yeah, we all gonna die. Who really cares? I feel like it became a thing of like Gen Z versus millennials and like, we look younger than y'all. No, y'all old and y'all. It just became this stupid conversation. I'm just like, all right, I'm out. I'm gonna head out. But yeah, let's hear what she has to say about the whole thing though. Let's watch.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. So if you've been on the internet for a little bit in the past couple weeks, you have seen that the girls are fighting. And by girls, I mean Gen Z versus the millennials in general.
So
and they're
we
fighting
all gonna
about
die. Y'all are all stupid.
So today we're gonna get into these age wars,
who gives a fuck?
Where it's come from.
And I know I've made several little slick comments about certain people that I've watched who have been like who have been like younger and they've said that they were young and I'm like made faces. First off, 85% of the shit that I do and say on this channel is for comedic purposes. If you too slow to pick up on that, I can't fucking help you, all right? So I do a lot of shit and I act very extra about certain shit and it's all for entertainment, to entertain y'all, to entertain myself even. I make myself laugh, okay? And I am entertained by the ridiculous shit that I say and do on this channel. But, I mean, ultimately, like I said, who cares? Who cares? And if you busted, age ain't, it's not gonna fucking save you if you're busted, okay? I've seen some people and they like early 20s talking shit and it's like, sure, you have youth on your side, but you're busted. So what are we talking about? And then the millennials, I've seen some of them like, oh no, we look so young. I'm like, no, you don't. What are we talking about? You claiming, oh, people think I'm 18. No, they don't. You liar. So everybody shut up. Everybody shut up. We're all gonna die. Y'all all look stupid. Everybody shut up. That's my opinion. But
it's really new, spoiler alert, it's not, and some of the reasons that I think might be behind it. So let's go ahead and get into the age wars. So this little age war, if you will, kicked up again recently after a man named Jordan Hallett posted a TikTok about how much older.
I was surprised by this though. I thought he was trolling at first, but I looked at the comments and it was like, yeah, he not lying. I thought he was lying when he said that he's 26 or something like that, but he wasn't lying. So I am a bit confused, but
he and other Gen Z look,
maybe he smokes or something,
for being decades older.
Get closer. I am Gen Z and nobody ever believes me. When my mom and I walk out in public, people think that my mom is my younger sister.
I know y'all seen this.
Right. When I tell people, oh, I'm gonna go hang out with my family, they think I'm talking about my children. I don't have kids. Right? I'm talking about my parents. I'm still the child. Does that make sense? I'll put it to you like this. Zendaya is older than me.
This survived the argument of why exactly Gen Z looks so old, or if we do at all, especially in comparison to millennials, the generation just above us. Millennials are those born between 1981 to 1996, so they would currently be between about 28 and 43 years old this year. Gen Z is roughly between 1997 and 2012, making them between 27 and 12 years old, depending on birthdays. On Twitter, I've seen the Lord rule, meaning that if you're older than Lord, who was born in November of 96, you're a millennial. If you're younger than Lord, you're Gen Z. Of course, if you were born later, November or December of 1996. Then there's an unofficial in-between group called Zillennials, who obviously technically fall in one group or the other, but since older Gen Z is so close to the millennials, a lot of us have very similar lived experiences. And though there's no official age range, a lot of people consider Zillennials to be those born between 1995 and 1999, give or take. Some people even expanded out to the entire decade, meaning that if you were born anywhere between 1990 and 2000, they would consider you a Zillennial. And now more than ever, because we're all in the same internet arena, culture wars are more or less the norm. But today we're going to pick just one and talk about age and the fight over which generation looks younger.
Millennials look younger than who?
You. I haven't even washed my face because I overslept, which is why my sleep mask is still on. Because I'm like, be late for work. And look.
See, this is kind of what I'm talking about. Mind you, well, let's go back and take a better look. Again, not that any of this matters or who cares. But girl, why are you so pressed? You go in your bathroom and try to blend your leave out with your weave. That's what you need to be worried about. not who the fuck looks older and younger. Again, I'm talking shit as somebody who's I didn't do my hair. So okay, if you see anything not blending, let's keep that in consideration. She clearly thought she did her hair and she hopped on TikTok and she's dressed. So there's that. Anyway, that's what you need to be worried about while you talking shit and asking who look older. You again. Who cares? It's not about that. But I just find this whole age war so fucking goofy. And then the next girl, lies you tell. If I looked at both of y'all, I would not say you look younger than her. So I don't understand what are we doing? What are we doing on Beyonce's internet at this moment? This is just stupid. No, you don't. Sorry. You're not bad looking.
Wash my face because I overslept.
We'll go wash it.
Still on because I was gonna be late for work. And look, 34 and proud.
Just because that one guy that everyone thought he was like in his 30s and he said he's part of Gen Z, he looks older than his age. And then everybody ran with that saying, oh my god, yeah, like Gen Z looks so much older than millennials.
Millennials and Gen Z are arguing about who looks younger, and I just don't understand. I don't get it. I would never argue about something so asinine. Because I'm pretty. Who cares about looking young, old, goddamn anything? I'm cute.
Period.
In general, people have been saying that Gen Z looks older than their age, and in some cases older than millennials. Especially in terms of younger Gen Z who are tweens and teens currently. I think a lot of this can be chalked up to them not necessarily looking like they're aging faster really, but styling themselves a lot older than their age. But if they dress differently, took all the makeup off, for example, they would look like the child that they are. And we've mentioned several times now how a lot of tweens and even teens don't have a lot of fashion or entertainment geared toward them. In terms of the older half of Gen Z, which is the group I fall into, one factor that's brought up a lot is stress, which can make one appear older. Stress and sleep deprivation can lead to the loss in skin elasticity, which can increase wrinkles and the appearance of things like eye bags. I don't think I need to explain why older Gen Z is stressed, but to name a few reasons: inflation, especially the rent crisis.
I saw this post and this dude was just like, oh, Gen Z so stressed. Now they said millennials, some millennials look younger because we don't take this internet shit serious. Like, we log off and go on about our business. Y'all take this internet shit way too serious. It affects your mental health and you're too invested in this bullshit. And I was like, facts.
Endless global conflicts, and a lot of struggling to find jobs even with university degrees. Many of these sources of stress are tied to anxiety and uncertainty about the future. And of course, I definitely don't think this only applies to Gen Z because several generations are more stressed than they've likely ever been in a while or ever. It's just comparatively, this aging caused by stress or the appearance of it is going to be more noticeable the younger one is. An interesting tidbit I found out is that stress-induced aging, so to speak, is somewhat temporary. In an article from New Scientist, Anne Klein writes, we become biologically older when our bodies are under stress, but younger again when we recover, according to a study that analyzed people's DNA when they had emergency hip surgery, had severe COVID-19, or were pregnant. This recovery suggests we have the machinery to be able to rewind the clock back at least a little bit, says James White at Duke University, who co-led this study with Vadim Gladisha at Harvard University. And this does sort of make sense. Think of like when someone leaves that terrible job or that awful partner, and even if they haven't made any specific changes to their looks, like a haircut or something like that, they might still appear a little younger simply because a stressor has been removed. One thing I was curious about was whether vaping had a hand in making Gen Z look older. Growing up, we always heard about how smoking can make you appear older, and from what I found, vaping nicotine does the same, as nicotine use in general accelerates skin aging. According to the CDC, about 11% of American adults aged 18 to 24, which is Gen Z, vape regularly, compared to only 4.5% of the population overall. So at least for some of Gen Z, nicotine use may contribute to them looking a little bit older than what they are. And to return to the debate as to whether Gen Z or millennials look younger, I feel like even across the generation lines, there are two separate camps in ideology here. There are Gen Z and millennials who do believe the millennials overall look young or younger by comparison. Honestly, I think especially with younger Gen Z, especially with teenagers, even speaking for myself back then, you often expect 30-year-olds to look more like how you would picture someone middle-aged. I'm talking 40s and 50s. But when you get a little older, you realize most people in their 30s don't look old because they're not. That's also why the, oh, they're aging like fine wine comments are funny to me sometimes, because now you'll see the internet say that about somebody who's like 32. Then there's the second camp of both Gen Z and millennials who don't necessarily think Gen Z looks especially young or old. More so, both groups mainly just look their age with some outliers here and there, which is normal for each generation, but we tend to latch on to those outliers. Obviously, in both age groups, all age groups really, but Gen Z and millennials are the topic for today. There's anxiety around aging, nothing new.
It feels so scary, getting old.
Just like how trends aren't new, but they're just exacerbated because of social media. Also because of social media, people of all ages are in the same arena online, and we probably see more people's faces than we were ever meant to, often meaning more comparison. Daily, we're showing quote-unquote perfection, faces that are enhanced by cosmetic work or filters, or see people whose looks are tied to their income so they're more preoccupied with them and can afford to maintain their looks to a degree that's not necessarily achievable for the so-called average person. This can, of course, skew what we think a normal person, so to speak, looks like or should look like.
Because she like 50-something, right? She look great.
Looks. I'm thinking back to the calamity that ensued a couple weeks ago with a 28-year-old showing off her untouched face. Also, on the topic of social media and seeing a bunch of faces, cosmetic enhancements can sometimes make you appear older. Over the past decade or so, the rise of the Kardashians being a large part of it, it's become normalized for younger people, say teenagers or people in their early 20s, to have cosmetic work done. Older Gen Z and millennials were almost adults or were adults around this time, which is like the mid-2010s. And for most of our lives, often a person, especially a woman, having a lot of work done, especially something like Botox or fillers, it was associated with trying to appear younger, of course implying that they weren't as young anymore. One of the few exceptions I can think about is maybe nose jobs as status symbols, especially in early 2000s high school media, or boob jobs being mentioned typically to disparage women. But certainly, it was not common to turn on the TV and see 22-year-olds talking about needing Botox or things of the like, or even noticeably having it. In fact, it would have been more likely used as an insult to someone that age rather than a reality or an aspiration. And to drive this point home, according to a Vogue study published last October, since 2010, there's been about a 28% increase in people ages 20 to 29 getting Botox. This might be hard to explain, but going off that, I don't think it's necessarily the case that someone who's, say, 20 with maybe a lot of Botox or filler genuinely looks 40 like a lot of people say. I think in most cases, like if your life depended on it, you would be able to differentiate a 25-year-old with a lot of filler, a lot of Botox, and a 45-year-old, especially one without any work done. Because a young person with that filler or Botox doesn't necessarily have the markers we associate with aging, like wrinkles, looser skin, or other obvious changes, at least to the extent that someone decades older than them might have. But they may have, say, cheek filler that we've come to associate with someone older trying to appear more youthful. That being said, I wonder if in a couple decades or so, once a good bit of the population has grown up seeing people with filler and things of the like from a relatively young age, will it not read as old or older to them? And that's if this trend continues, which a lot of beauty trends don't. And I can see it not, since a lot of people are pointing out we don't really know the lasting effects of decades of using Botox and filler from a very young age. One procedure that does in a way actually mimic the effects of aging, though, is buccal fat removal. That's because the procedure removes the fat pads from your cheeks. And as we age, we lose fat and collagen in our faces, bone density as well, which can result in a thinner looking face or more hollow cheeks. And also because there may not be as much fat to fill out that skin, it can also result in more wrinkles. And that is one of the specific procedures there's been a lot of talk about. One, because it does actually, so to speak, age a lot of people quickly, especially if they have more buccal fat removed than what would probably be recommended. And two, is also irreversible. Aside from the social capital that youth brings, because it is real unfortunately, I feel like a lot of Gen Z and millennials especially are preoccupied with looking or being perceived as young. Because one thing that does unite quite a few of us is the sense of arrested development. So a lot of us still kind of feel like teenagers or young adults because our lives might not be radically different from when we were that age, even if it's not for lack of trying. I think this is partly where a lot of the I'm a 35-year-old teenage girl, I'm a 25-year-old teenage girl jokes, I also make them come from. And then the nostalgia on top of that, be it fashion or media, a lot of the media that's out right now is heavily inspired by, if not a reboot, of the same media we were watching as teens or young adults. So it's very easy to feel like you're in that space.
Trying to get into it.
And nostalgia is definitely normal, but obviously this nostalgia overload we're living in right now, from a lot of articles I've read, it's been tied to a decreased optimism for the future. In her Substack piece titled How Millennials Grew Up and Got Old, author Anne Helen Peterson, a millennial herself, raised another interesting point regarding some millennials' seeming aversion to aging. Peterson makes the point that perhaps it's not necessarily youth per se that millennials are after, but the attention and spotlight of being the most talked about generation, which they've had for so long that much of Gen Z, myself included, has been miscategorized as millennials. Peterson writes, I'm not even talking about being the locus of cool, more like you just seem to matter less. People are less anxious about you, less mad about you. If anything, they seem slightly annoyed by you. You're no longer the future. You're the well-worn middle. This reminds me of how, sadly, often a lot of women say that as they age, they become more invisible to society, especially in favor of younger women. Or, for example, when your mom has...
what happened to her? I need a hug. Why are you going to Twitter for this child? Jesus. At 50, we women become invisible. I'm now 62. I lost my job and was replaced by a 25-year-old. Damn. They've been trying to find a way to get rid of me for 3 years now. They covered all their bases. It's humiliating and so hurtful. I was good at what I did. I just aged out. That's very sad, but why Twitter? Why not your therapist?
Age, they become more invisible to society, especially in favor of younger women. Or for example, when your mom has the new baby, and now while you're definitely still loved, you might not be the center of her attention to the degree that you were previously, and that's a difficult adjustment. Peterson links this to a lot of millennials' bafflement when parts of Gen Z or even Gen Alpha isn't as familiar with the artists that they grew up with. The term she uses for this phenomenon is being washed, which was taken from the article In Praise of Being Washed, written by Zach Baron in 2018. At the time he wrote that article, he was 36, so he is also a millennial. The article is framed within Barron's excitement to see Beachella and Jay-Z's surprise appearance. He says during that performance and the internet's reaction to it afterwards, it became evident to him that Jay-Z, someone he'd been a fan of for decades, had gotten older. And he couldn't even really hate because that means so had he, calling himself and Jay-Z quote-unquote washed. In Barron's eyes, washed compared to being washed up is not a negative term, simply a neutral one, which he applies to older generations, which now is millennials and beyond, who are no longer in that generational limelight. Barron notes one positive aspect to not being in this limelight, as abrupt and uncomfortable it may feel, is that there is freedom in the decreased scrutiny. At that point, you're on the other side of your 20s and hopefully have a stronger sense of self and less to prove. He writes, you spent years building up something, taste, experience, judgment. You were trying to like what you saw in the mirror, as all ambitious people try to do. What I'm saying is, perhaps you actually like that person now. Perhaps you could use the mirror less. In terms of Jay-Z or any artist, athlete, or figure that's contemporary with our generation, there is a tendency to always want to see that figure, especially if we like them as relevant or over-exaggerate their relevance in a way meant to sort of justify our own relevance. Not to say that if you're not 20 or fans of 20-year-olds, you're irrelevant, but that sometimes we do this because we're either oblivious to or a little bit in denial about the passage of time.
I not even know he performed at Beach Hour.
And it's not even only millennials doing it in this moment. As Barron wrote that article...
She trolling. My boyfriend's son tells me. Yeah, this is a filter.
For 5 years.
Okay, literally says that in the bottom corner. I wasn't looking over there. I was just very distracted by this big, I'm 23. I'm like, ain't no fucking way.
I'm sure a lot of people my age, maybe even a little younger, can relate to that now, even though we're Gen Z. A current example I can think of are the reactions to MGMT's Time to Pretend being featured in the movie Saltburn. The song, which came out in 2007, experienced a resurgence in popularity, prompting some, mostly on TikTok, to hear the song for the first time. Some reactions to this were millennials feeling old that people had never heard the song before. But likewise, there were a lot of older Gen Z saying the same or saying this was making them feel old. And I think this illustrates two things. One, it's further proof that older Gen Z and younger millennials didn't consume completely different media, hence the portmanteau made of our two generation names.
I've never heard this
and
song.
Secondly, it also shows that even older Gen Z is coming to the realization that our time in the generational limelight is temporary too, and it's sobering in a way. A couple weeks ago, I saw a comment of a kid saying they didn't really know what Hannah Montana was, and I almost wanted to cry, but such is the cycle of life. Gen Z isn't the first generation to be hit.
I know what Hannah Montana is, but I can't tell you anything else about the show other than that Miley Cyrus was the main person. I know nothing else about it because I didn't watch it.
Look old as hell allegations. My whole life, and even still, I've seen pictures and videos of teenagers from the 70s and 80s.
So it's all about, what you consume.
They were, which is a common sentiment. And more recently, I've seen people begin to actually analyze these pictures more, and technology's been helpful in that, and point out the reason a lot of these teens look older was just the way that they dress and style themselves. Certain haircuts, hairstyles, or even glasses can make you look older, even if you don't necessarily look as old in the face. And then on top of that, we associate those styles with being older because they're decades old. Even if it's something young people were wearing at the time, since in your head you know they're way older now, it just seems more dated. And of course, it's also been pointed out that nicotine use was a lot higher in decades past, very high actually between the 50s and 90s, and nicotine is one of those substances that can make you look like you're aging faster. Then this one isn't related to kids or even young adults, but one that I see often is people being shocked that the Golden Girls were actually supposed to be in their early, mid, late 50s in general, I'll say, during the majority of the show. And to be fair, Betty White and Bea Arthur, who played Rose and Dorothy, were in their early 60s in season 1, so older than their characters. Rue McClanahan, who played Blanche, however, was 51 in the first season. And not only are their clothes dated, period accurate for them, but dated now, of course, but I feel like back then there was more of a sense of distinction in how different generations or different ages of adults dress. Whereas now I would say it's more common even for
Betty White was
20s
5
and
when she
to
was
dress
younger.
similarly than they might have decades previously. And actually, when looking this up, I did
saw
find out
pictures
that
of her and
people
I
were
was
making
like,
a similar point because their minds were blown and they were surprised that the characters from the Sex and the City reboot were the same age as the Golden Girls. At the end of the day, I feel like overall, in every single generation there is or ever has been, will be, there's people who look way older than they actually are, and there are people who look way younger than they actually are.
Exactly. So who cares? I'm going to just stop it there. Y'all check out her video. I'll put the link down below. But, yeah, like I said, I feel like this argument or this war is just so tired and we're all going to die. When you're on your deathbed, are you going to be like, I'm so glad that I looked young for a little bit longer than the people around me? Like, who gives a fuck? Have a full life. Enjoy your time while you're here. And that's that. Take care of yourself. Because that is definitely that plays a role in people looking older. I will say that. She talked about people smoking or whatever. And I'll add to that, people who don't take care of their bodies. If you are, eating hot Cheetos every other day and going to McDonald's several times a week, it's not going to, help you. Also, if you're drinking a lot, if you drink heavily, it's also going to age you very, very rapidly. I have family members who are around my same age and they drink heavily. They look way older than me, like substantially older. So you might want to chill on that as well. I barely ever drink. The last time I drank was like Oh, it was the first week of January. I drank 1 shot of tequila, so it's been a month. And I don't plan on drinking anytime soon until I go on vacation. I will be going out of town next month. So I make an exception for vacation for sure. But I'm still not even gonna drink heavily on vacation. But I'll have a couple drinks here and there. But yeah, just take care of yourself and you'll be fine. But ultimately, who cares? Y'all let me know what y'all think though. Let me know what other videos you want to watch, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Bye.